When it comes to industries in the UK, we often talk about the service industry being the number one industry in the UK, and it is true. 80% of our economy is based on the services industry. But today we're going to talk about the fifth biggest industry in the UK, and that would be hospitality. And hospitality for years has had a very, very, very bad rep when it's come to, well, pretty much everything. Um, Working under social hours, very poor rates of pay, little to no union protection working in some of these areas, and is seen by most people as more of a dead end career in the UK. Whereas across the continent, you have entire colleges dedicated to people having service, hospitality career industries, and not just in catering, but in front of house, how to run restaurants, everything you can possibly think of. So, why is that available on the continent, but not in the UK? And I think most of it has become because it's been very cultural. To be honest, from what I can tell, I think many people have, different takes to me, but one in particular that's being presented today at the Labour conference is by a guy called Sacha Lord. You might have seen him be a big, big pusher of talking about how, the Conservatives just left out millions of people from any pandemic help, or particularly freelancers during that time. But, they're left completely destitute during that time. That is something that, should be addressed. But today, we're talking about hospitality industry, and especially for the UK, it is our fifth largest economy. And to be honest, these ideas are pretty good, very good indeed. So let's take a look at this 5-point plan to save the UK hospitality industry. Now, before we go having a look at these ideas that are going to be put forward at Labour conference, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there is a link to my Patreon page and a one-off link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. There is the YouTube thank you button, and of course the Pony Club down below as well. So let's get this set up properly. So here you go. Sacha Lord's 5-point plan to save hospitality. Like I say, you can find this on Twitter. He's got his own website as well, where you can, I think, find more stuff in detail. Like I say, I'd be very actually interested to see how this gets received at the conference and if this really gets taken up. But I think this would be a very good idea. Like I say, it's our fifth largest, our fifth biggest sector in the UK when it comes to employment. So ignoring it really does come at our peril, and especially coming out of things like COVID, the cost of living crisis, hospitality has taken hit after hit after hit. So if we ignore it, then we are ignoring our almost fifth biggest sector in the UK. So you can see the potential problems by not paying attention to it. So let's see what these 5 points are. So point one, reinstate the hospitality VAT rate. The 12.5% VAT rate for hospitality and tourism sectors was a lifeline for the sector and must be reinstated. This would allow the UK to compete with many European countries where the average rates are at least 8 to 9%. Ultimately, the 12.5% of revenue for the Exchequer is better than 20% of nothing, which will increasingly be the result if businesses go under. To say nothing of the lost PYE and business rates and corporation tax revenue. That is true. Currently, during the pandemic, it was lowered to that to help the hospitality industry. It got raised back to 20%. Look at Europe; it's 8 to 9% over in Europe. Why is it 20% here? Lowering it would help a lot of hospitality businesses who are desperately at this time, really taking an absolute beating at this moment. And he makes a good point. 12.5% is better than nothing, and we are increasingly seeing more and more hospitality businesses go under. So that, to be honest, point number one, entirely agree with, especially for hospitality businesses. So number two, Review the outdated and unfair business rates. Something a lot of people have said. Business rates are, of course, set by local councils. And partly because of why business rates have become so onerous over these recent number of years has been because of Tory austerity. You know, they've had to rely on reduced money from the government, so councils have had to get their money from somewhere else. Most of it, of course, comes from council tax. Then, of course, you've got the business rates. And because, councils have ultimate control over business rates, this is what you have seen. Councils using business rates to survive. So there is a larger issue, I think, here at rate. But I will be interested to see how sort of Sacha Lord would sort of say that about that, because it is a bigger issue. It's not just that they are outdated or unfair. There's the fact that you've had Tory austerity where many councils have been relying on these business rates in order to keep councils running. And now, from austerity, from businesses closing, well, then now they're losing those business rates. So there's a bigger question really at issue, I think, at play than just doing that. But let's see what he says here. So Britain suffered a net decline of over 4,593 licensed premises in the year to March of 2023. It is time that the business rate system was reformed to actively support and encourage venues that promote a social and community good, such as pubs and restaurants. Again, like I say, can't disagree. But I want to point out business rates have been used by councils in order to survive. And we are seeing recently that more and more councils are going bankrupt. Why? Because, of course, they've been relying on these business rates. They were relying on the EU infrastructure funding to help them survive as well. With more businesses closing, that means less business rate income. Of course, what we're seeing now, a lot of councils in crisis. So I think there's a bigger point to play than just reviewing business rates. But I will agree that business rates do need to be something that should be looked at. So, point number 3, fully devolving licensing laws. Can't agree more. Like I say, let the regionals decide what their licensing laws should be. Every area is different. Nighttime economies are vastly different from city to city. Let them decide what their licensing laws are. Completely, fully agree on that. So, number 3, what he says, our diverse and vibrant regional nightlife economies are curtailed by the overly centralized licensing laws that risk imposing a one-size-fits-all approach on an industry. Instead, local authorities should have greater powers to control licensing. And again, as I said, absolutely couldn't agree more on that. Let the local authorities decide what those licensing laws are. So, number 4, end the energy ripoff. This one I think is really important. So the government must give Ofgem more power to be able to step in and insist that businesses and customers are released from untenable long-term energy contracts set when the price of energy and gas were astronomically high. Energy companies must stop using energy-intensive hospitality businesses as a cash cow, crippling them while at the same time recording record profits. And that is what we have seen. That is very true. Constantly, energy companies recording record profits while having these big contracts that if you were a pub or a restaurant that you've signed up to, you can't get out of it until the end of your contract. And of course, those prices were done during the high rate of energy. So if the cost of energy come down, doesn't matter. You might be still on that high rate for the next couple of years. So absolutely give Ofgem more power. This is what a lot of people have talked about for a long time, giving Ofgem more power. I think a windfall tax on energy companies getting in on this profit would also be a very good idea as well. But couldn't agree more. Give customers and businesses ways out of these long-term contracts when it is very clearly that if they were to go and get another contract, they could get a lower cost. So, number 5, secure the workforce for the future. As we said at the beginning, massive difference between the UK. One second. Massive difference. I've just missed my mouth completely. That's embarrassing. Um, massive difference um, for um, how the hospitality sector is viewed in the UK versus sort of the rest of Europe. So does something that we could and gets into this. So I'm really pleased to see that. Um, in order for our hospitality sector to thrive, we must cultivate a talented workforce. Again, not only just the hospitality sector, every single sector we need would say the same thing. Careers in hospitality can be extremely rewarding and lead to high skilled jobs. The government should reform the curriculum to reflect the millions of permanent jobs in the industry, introduce a hospitality T level. Again, we have those in Europe. Why don't we have them here? And of course, not just catering, because that's all you see in hospitality. You want to go into hospitality, there's your catering costs, and that's it in terms of hospitality. And encourage students to consider the industry for careers, not just mere Saturday jobs. Again, that'll be a big, I think, cultural shift. That'll take a lot longer, I think, than a mere couple of years. But no, I agree on that. That would be a big, substantial investment, and it's not just, of course, the hospitality industry that requires, you know, that type of infrastructure investment of improving your workforce, building your workforce of the future. That is what a lot of industries are saying. Apprenticeships, the apprenticeship levy has been abused completely by big corporations that have used it basically to get cheap labor while not offering a proper job or even a permanent job at the end of that course. And in reality, you've got the small and medium businesses who are crying out constantly of apprenticeships and how good they could get. If they could get someone, they could get someone who would train them. The government, of course, would help pay them. Here's the job at the end of it. Of course, all that levy has been sucked away by the big companies. So again, 2 points where I'd say there's larger issues at play. Obviously, point 2 about the business rates, and of course, the 5th point, again, while I agree, I think there's larger stuff, of course, that needs to go at play, especially when it comes to apprenticeships and things like that. But most of it, yeah, I pretty much agree on all of that. I can't really not disagree with it. Be very interested to see if you were at the Labour conference and you saw this. What did you think to this? Or if this is your first time seeing it, what do you think to some of these points? I think he's got some really good points and some stuff that do need to be addressed on this. And I think Labour, if they do pick up on this, like I say, hospitality, 5th largest sector in the UK, very big employer. Lots of people run their own hospitality businesses. It could be a big win if Labour really look at this, but not just, of course, the hospitality industry. There's a couple of other things they really need to look at as well. So, but to be fair, hospitality industry is something that we don't often cover on this channel. So that's why I sort of really wanted to. When I saw this, I was like, perfect. Let's cover this. Let's have a look at this, because I think if some of these points do get taken up, probably by Ed Miliband, because it'll be him who will be the business minister. Definitely worth pursuing. Definitely worth pursuing indeed. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.